The red and blue lights lit up the dark street like an emergency in a war zone. Maya Thomas tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her heart pounding in her ears. She wasn't speeding. Her tail lights were working. She had just finished tutoring a group of younger students at the community center and was driving home, tired, but proud. The police cruiser swerved behind her, blocking her path. A sharp flash of the siren. No explanation. She lowered her window. A white officer approached, heavy boots, squared shoulders, a face that didn't blink. His name tag read, R. Miller. License and registration. Maya complied, her fingers trembling slightly. Can I ask why I was stopped, officer? He didn't answer. He snatched her ID, looked it over, then let out a scoff. What's this? You live around here? Yes. Maya blinked. Excuse me? I said, is this car yours, or is it stolen and you're just playing smart? The insult landed like a slap. Maya kept her voice calm, but firm. It's registered to me. You can check the documents. Miller leaned in, close enough for her to smell the chewing tobacco on his breath. You know what your problem is? He said. You think manners will save you. They won't. She swallowed, her hand still on the wheel. I haven't done anything wrong. That was the moment the mask slipped off. You people always got an answer, he muttered, then louder, step out of the vehicle. She hesitated. I said out, now. Before she could unbuckle her seatbelt, he yanked the door open and dragged her out. Her head hit the frame. She cried out. He shoved her against the hood, cold metal, her cheek pressed down, his knee on her back. Stop resisting, he shouted, though she hadn't moved. Someone across the street began recording. She was handcuffed and forced into the back of the cruiser. No explanations, no Miranda rights, just silence and humiliation. As they drove away, Maya stared out the window, blood trickling from her temple, heart fractured but not yet broken. Somewhere inside her, something dark and ancient stirred, not fear, not anger, something colder. It had begun. The courthouse smelled of bleach and old despair, the kind of smell that stuck to your clothes and burrowed into your bones. Maya sat on the cold bench in a holding cell, wrists bruised from the cuffs. Her scalp still ached where her head hit the doorframe. A dried smear of blood curled by her eyebrow. No one had offered her a tissue. They hadn't even called her lawyer. The guard opened the door. Let's go. Showtime. Two other women in orange jumpsuits watched as Maya was let out. One of them whispered, "Don't cry. That's what they want." The courtroom was a slab of white tiles, fluorescent lights, and silent stairs. At the bench sat Judge Clarence Dunbar, mid-60s, pale skin, thinning gray hair, a man who looked like he'd rather be on a golf course than dispensing justice. On the prosecutor's side stood Officer R. Miller, starched uniform spotless, smirk painted on like armor. He didn't look at Maya, he looked through her. Her public defender, a young woman barely older than Maya, clutched a thin folder of documents and tried to smile reassuringly. Maya was led to the defendant's table. No one asked if she was hurt. No one asked if she understood why she was here. All rise. The bailiff called out. Everyone stood. The judge entered, adjusted his glasses, and sighed. Case number 3487, State of Georgia versus Maya Thomas. Charges, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and obstruction of justice. Maya opened her mouth. Her lawyer gently touched her arm. Don't speak. The judge barely looked up. The prosecutor began. Your Honor, this young woman was hostile and combative. She refused lawful orders and became aggressive. Officer Miller feared for his safety. Maya's jaw clenched. Her fists trembled in her lap. Feared for his safety? From me? Miss Thomas was also wearing what appeared to be gang-affiliated attire, including a head covering that raised suspicion. Her heart dropped. The head wrap her grandmother gave her, now branded criminal. The judge nodded. This court takes threats to public order very seriously. Was there any recording? The prosecutor replied smoothly. No official footage. We believe there may have been a civilian video, but its credibility is unconfirmed. A lie. She remembered the phone pointed at her from across the street, but the truth was fragile here, easily bent and quietly discarded. Judge Dunbar leaned forward. Miss Thomas, do you understand the charges against you? Maya stood. Her knees trembled. I didn't resist. I asked why I was stopped. That's all I did. And then, he dragged me, he shaved. Miss Thomas, the judge interrupted. You are not to speak out of turn. You will respect this court, or you will be held in contempt. Maya bit her lip. The room spun slightly. Then, a quiet exchange between the judge and the bailiff. A nod from Miller. "Bring her forward," said the judge. The bailiff grabbed her arm and walked her to the center of the courtroom. Maya didn't understand. "Remove the head covering," the judge ordered. Her hands flew up instinctively. "It's for religious. This is not a mosque. Remove it." Maya hesitated. The room grew still. Miller stepped forward. "I'll do it." Before she could move, his hand ripped the scarf from her head. A few gasps from the audience. Maya stood frozen, scalp exposed, hair pulled half loose from the previous night's braid. She tried to cover herself. Miller grabbed a pair of clippers from his belt. No one stopped him. "Let's make her court appropriate," he sneered. She screamed, "Order!" The clippers buzzed. Cold steel touched her skin. It was not about appearance. It was about stripping her identity, her dignity, her see. When it was done, pieces of her hair littered the. Maya sank to her knees. The courtroom was silent. And in that silence, something inside her died, and something that remembered, something that would not forget. They left the pieces of her hair on the courtroom floor like broken evidence. No one moved to sweep it. No one dared to speak. The silence clung to every wall like mold. Maya knelt there, bald, humiliated, trembling. The cold air bit at her exposed scalp. The courtroom's horrors. She wrapped her arms around herself, not out of modesty, but to hold in the scream clawing up her throat. Judge Dunbar cleared his throat. "Bailiff, return the defendant to holding." That was it. No condemnation of Officer Miller. No acknowledgement of what had just occurred. No mention of the religious violation, the physical assault, the public dehumanization. Just the thud of a gavel and the pretense of order. Maya didn't struggle when they pulled her up. She moved like a ghost, weightless, as if her soul had quietly detached. When they closed the holding cell behind her again, she sat in the corner, knees to chest, trying to remember the sound of her grandmother's voice. She didn't cry. She couldn't afford to. 6 hours later, in a bleak conference room with flickering lights and walls the color of wet paper, her public defender finally arrived. "I'm sorry," she whispered, shutting the door behind her. "They didn't let me speak to you privately until now." Maya said nothing. Her eyes stared through her, through everything. The young woman set a folder on the table. Her name tag read A. Pierce. "Maya, listen. What happened in court was completely out of line. I've filed an emergency complaint with the Circuit Oversight Board. I'm also reaching out to the ACLU and several press contacts." Maya blinked slowly. "They let him do it." "I know," Pierce said softly. "It was wrong, deeply wrong, and we're going to fight it. But you need to understand, Judge Dunbar is old guard. Connections everywhere. If we push too hard right now, they'll bury this and you with it." Maya turned to her, voice raw. "So what? I wait for another day for them to strip me again? Slower this time?" Pierce hesitated. "No, you speak when you're ready. But for now, we play smart. I'm going to file a motion to have your charges dropped based on judicial misconduct and violation of civil rights." She slid a pen toward Maya. "This is a formal affidavit. Sign it, and we take the first step." Maya reached out. Her hand shook. Pierce paused. "Did he hurt you before the courtroom?" There it was, the question that had been circling like a vulture. Maya nodded once, eyes distant. "He slammed me against the car, called me animal, said people like me don't get to wear royalty on their heads. Then he laughed." Pierce's lips parted slightly in horror. She quickly composed herself. "Okay, that's enough for now. We'll include it. You're not alone in this." But Maya had already looked away. She was remembering the laughter, not Miller's, but the people in the hallway outside the courtroom, the ones who had watched and smiled, the ones who didn't flinch when the clippers buzzed. That night, in the county detention dorm, Maya lay on a narrow cot under a flickering bulb. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the clippers, felt the cold steel, smelled her own fear. A whisper reached her from the bunk below. "Hey, you the girl they shaved?" Maya didn't answer. Another voice, "That was messed up. He's done stuff like that before." Maya turned her head. "They shaved my cousin's braids." The voice continued, "Said they were a gang symbol. You know what it really was? Just beautiful. That's what scared them." A pause. "You gone fight them?" Maya stared at the ceiling. Her scalp burned. Her pride ached more. "Yes," she whispered, "but not in their court, in mine." The morning came too fast. The lights in the dormitory snapped on with a hiss, and the clamor of metal on metal rang through the room as guards pounded on the bars. "Get up, court prep." Maya blinked at the ceiling, then slowly sat up. Her scalp still stung. She could feel every draft, every whisper of wind where her crown used to be. Today, she wouldn't be the only one in court. 3 other women, all black, all younger than 30, were being processed for morning hearings. Maya sat between them in the holding van, her wrists cuffed, her eyes fixed on the smeared window. "You the girl they shaved?" one of them whispered. Maya didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke louder than any confession. "I saw that video," the woman continued. "Someone leaked it. Girl, that ain't just assault. That's a message. They sending a message to all of us." Maya finally looked at her. "What message?" "That if we stand tall, they'll strip us bare." The van jolted over a pothole. For a moment, Maya closed her eyes. She remembered being 15, watching her mother wrap her locks before prayer, how gently she tucked them, like she was handling something sacred. Maya didn't pray much, but she remembered what those locks meant. And now she understood what it meant for someone to take them. When she entered the courthouse again, the buzz was immediate. Not from the Clippers this time, from the press. They were there. Outside the metal detectors, reporters jostled for space, microphones held like daggers, cameras flashing in waves. "Maya Sullivan, do you plan to press charges? Did Officer Miller shave your head as punishment? Do you believe this was racially motivated?" She kept walking, one foot after another. The cuffs still bit into her skin, but she walked like a queen returning to her stolen kingdom. Inside, the air was thicker. Every bailiff seemed more alert. Every officer looked tenser, and behind it all was Judge Dunbar, waiting on his throne of leather and arrogance. She was led into the courtroom, flanked by 2 guards. This time, her attorney, Pierce, was already standing, fire in her eyes. "Your Honor, before we begin, I have filed a formal motion requesting immediate dismissal of all charges based on yesterday's events." Dunbar adjusted his glasses slowly, expression unreadable. "I have reviewed your motion, Counselor. You're asking the court to dismiss assault, resisting arrest, and obstruction because of a haircut?" Pierce didn't flinch. "I'm asking the court to dismiss the charges due to an egregious abuse of power, religious and cultural violation, and a grotesque breach of civil rights. And, Your Honor, if the court refuses to acknowledge this, we will file federal charges." The room stiffened. Dunbar leaned forward. "Miss Sullivan was found attacking a police vehicle with a metal pipe. That is not in dispute." Maya raised her voice. "I was defending myself." The judge paused, surprised. "I didn't attack the car," she continued. "I hit the mirror because the officer tried to drag me inside, because he spat on me and called me an animal." The room murmured. "Order," Dunbar barked. But Maya kept going. "And then in your courtroom, he shaved me, like I was livestock, like I was his to break." Pierce rested a hand gently on Maya's arm, but didn't stop her. "You let it happen," Maya said, eyes locked on the judge. "You turned your bench into a gallows." Dunbar's knuckles whitened. "This hearing is over," he snapped. "Miss Sullivan is to be remanded until—" "No," a voice said from the back. It was soft, but sharp. "Female." Everyone turned. A woman stepped forward from the gallery, long gray locks, long coat, proud back. Maya's heart stopped. "Mom?" The courtroom was frozen. Even the judge didn't speak. The woman walked slowly down the aisle. "I am Reverend Celeste Sullivan," she said clearly, "and I will be representing my daughter as co-counsel. She is no longer alone." Outside, the story was already going viral. Inside, Maya stood taller. This was no longer about jail time. This was about something older, deeper, louder, something they couldn't shave away. The cell Maya was placed in after the hearing wasn't like the others. There were no roommates, no bunks, just 4 concrete walls, a stainless steel toilet, and a narrow slit for light. The door slammed shut behind her with a finality that made her flinch. Isolation. It wasn't punishment on record, it was safety protocol. Because she was a high-profile detainee. Because the officer who shaved her was under investigation. Because letting her near the others might incite unrest. But Maya knew the truth. They were afraid. Not for her, of her. The moment she stood in that courtroom and defied the judge, they saw her not as a girl, but as a threat. Her words, her fire, the cameras that picked up every syllable, they couldn't risk that spreading. So they put her in a box. Alone. She sat down on the cold floor and looked at the wall in front of her. It had names etched into the concrete. Old names, forgotten ones. Kenya. Trina. A. James. Shay Baby. She read them again and again, like prayers. Then she carved her own name. Not as an inmate, but as a witness. The next morning, the cell door opened without warning. 2 guards, male, silent. They didn't speak, just handcuffed her, led her down a back corridor, and opened a room with no windows. Inside was a table, 2 chairs, and a camera in the corner with a blinking red light. Interview room, one of the guards muttered. But no lawyer waited inside. Instead, a woman in a gray suit sat at the table, a badge on her lapel, cold smile, military posture. "Miss Sullivan," she said, "I'm Agent Caldwell, Department of Justice. We need to talk." She asked questions Maya had been expecting, about the arrest, about Officer Miller, about the video. But then the tone shifted. "Why did you resist? Why didn't you comply? Do you feel your hairstyle was provocative to authority figures?" Maya's lip curled. "Are you serious?" Agent Caldwell's smile stayed frozen. "Your image is becoming viral. You're being made into a symbol, but symbols are dangerous when they inspire disruption." Maya stared at her. "And shaved heads are safe, huh?" A pause. Agent Caldwell leaned forward. "If you want leniency, if you want this to end well, it would be wise to stop fueling the fire." Maya's voice didn't waver. "The fire was here before me. You just didn't expect it to speak." Let's pause for a brief moment. If you're listening to this story, take a second and tell us in the comments, where in the world are you hearing our voices? Have you ever witnessed or lived something similar? We'd love to know your story. And if this narrative resonates with you, consider subscribing. Now, let's continue. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. Not because of the cold floor, or the fluorescent light that never turned off, but because she couldn't stop thinking about her mother. Celeste Sullivan. The woman who had once led protests outside prisons. The woman who had buried 2 sons to police violence. The woman who used to say, "Even if the system eats you, leave your fingerprints on its teeth." And now, she had walked into that courtroom like a storm given flesh. Was she really going to stand beside Maya in trial? Would the court even allow it? Or would they find a way to disbar her, silence her, like they tried with everyone who spoke too loud? 2 days later, the answer came. Another hearing. This time, Celeste was in a suit. She stood before the court, presenting her credentials, her license to practice, her decades of advocacy. The judge tried to challenge it, tried to argue emotional involvement. But Celeste didn't blink. "My daughter is not a defendant," she said. "She is a survivor, and I am here to defend what they tried to strip from her." The courtroom wasn't the same as before. There were more cameras now, more eyes. And behind them, a growing crowd. Activists, journalists, mothers, daughters, faces Maya didn't know, but who knew her. She wasn't alone anymore. They built a cage to break her, but they had only built a stage. The courthouse was surrounded. The morning of Maya's final hearing, there were crowds spilling over the steps, down the sidewalks, across the street. Journalists held mics with frostbitten fingers. Protesters chanted through megaphones. There were posters of Maya's face, some with her shaved head, others showing the braid they'd torn away. Her name was no longer just hers. It was a cry. Inside, Maya waited in a suit borrowed from her mother. Her wrists were free for the first time in weeks. No cuffs, no orange. Just nerves, stretching taut beneath the surface like piano wire. Celeste stood beside her, radiating a quiet fury. She'd spent every night poring over files, case law, precedent, exposing the contradictions, the irregularities, the brutality. But this wasn't just about legal flaws. It was about making them look her daughter in the eyes. Judge Kershaw entered with that same glacial expression, a lifetime of silence carved into his face. Officer Miller wasn't in the room. He had been relocated for safety, but the courtroom was filled with police. Every row, every shadow, watching. The trial moved fast. The prosecution insisted Maya had been disorderly, aggressive, resistant to routine search. Celeste tore their language apart. She presented the video, the moment Maya was pinned, dragged, shorn, not for safety, but humiliation. She called out the chain of command, the lack of documentation, the false statements signed under oath. Witness after witness, including a nurse, testified that Maya never posed a threat. But the moment that broke the silence was Maya's. Celeste called her to the stand. She stood, walked slowly, her bare scalp catching the courtroom lights like a badge. And she told them everything. What the officer whispered before the cut. The laughter. The way her hands had trembled, not from rage, but from shame. And how none of it started with her. How it started decades before she was born. How it started when certain people were born black and someone decided that made them dangerous. When she finished, no one clapped. But no one breathed, either. The jury returned 3 hours later. The courtroom stood. The foreman's voice was clear. We find the defendant not guilty on all charges. But that wasn't the end. Celeste requested a federal investigation into systemic misconduct in the department. Maya filed a civil suit for assault, violation of rights, and psychological abuse. And outside the courthouse, when Maya stepped into the freezing light, she didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just looked at the sea of people waiting. And then, someone stepped forward. A girl, maybe 12, with braids. She held out a pair of silver scissors, not sharp, not threatening, gently, like a gift. Maya took them. The girl whispered, "You can cut mine, if you want." Maya looked into her eyes, then slowly shook her head. "No, baby, you keep yours. We're not hiding anymore." She handed the scissors back. Then, she turned to the cameras. And for the first time, she didn't flinch.